involve C.
70%.
Of all the spellings.
Yeah.
Of all the spellings of K involve C. Now, you get in trouble with the classical scholars because they look back on history and like to use the C and so on, but C is, I don't need to tell you as a typographer, is about the worst letter in the alphabet for legibility.
That I don't buy at all.
You don't?
That I don't buy at all. No, that is straining at a gnat. I think that I know what you're driving at, but really, there are so many other better examples of trouble with letter confusion than C and E, lowercase c and E.
I somewhat misspoke myself there because in speaking of it as the worst letter, it takes into account not merely its lack of distinctive form, but its ambiguity. You have not merely your hard C and soft C and your
that indeed
shallow and so
yes.
forth, and its use for the CH in a few cases and so forth. That if you're going to have one letter, you should certainly plump for K, and in doing that, you're grossly offending compatibility because, as I say, 70% of the spellings of the K sound involve C, either singly or doubled or in CK.
Well,
so we made a great deal of study trying to come to a complete agreement with the British on some of these last points, and broke down finally because the British organization has practically disintegrated. The men of standing and have simply resigned. It's in the hands of a crackpot phonetist or phonetician, Sinclair Eustace, who hasn't scrupled to use any means. Among others, he threw a book at the chairman, and he packed a meeting with schoolboys whose dues he paid. And if he found that a meeting was coming up in which he would be outvoted, he managed to have the meeting canceled.
Oh, that's too bad.
And it has so the Professor Abercrombie and Maurice Harrison and Sir James Pittman and I had all resigned from the association, from the society, because they are bound in a no new letter notation which they have championed consistently for 60 years, and which they did a superb job in developing, though it was improved on a couple of times. The Eustace, who is now riding high, insists on inserting a schwa into the notation. Well, the minute you insert one character that is not on every typewriter, not on every printer's font, you have transformed the entire situation.
Absolutely. I completely agree with you.
That's
completely.
Right. That is the tack. They're calling it an alternative, but that's the one that they're paying attention to under Eustace's lead. And of course there is a second reason, and that is that very, very few people indeed are competent to use schwa if they had it.
Right. And it would wholly change the appearance of everything if you used it. It would be terrible.
Changes. There's one thing that you may have noticed in this alphabet. Some of these letters were perfectly clear, but when we came to a problem in the notation which preceded that one, the one that was called the Spelling Reform Association Phonetic Alphabet, we enlisted the help of Fred Gowdy as one of the committee members. He didn't pretend to know anything about phonetics, but we adopted no character unless he was able to produce a form which he would pass as conforming to the canons of the Roman alphabet. And I call your attention, of the lowercase Roman alphabet.
Yes.
I call your attention particularly to that schwa there, which was very skillfully designed to slip under the I either as a clipped A or a broken O or an inverted E, which is what the phonetists use, which is always looks like an inverted E and is awkward.
Yes.
Now, since practically all the initial and final unaccented A's are schwa, it replaces A great deal, and it replaces O some and E a great deal. And they say that one character is so skillfully designed that you would regard it as a modification of any one of the three that it most often replaces.
Yes, that's and I must say a word for Gowdy. Gowdy was certainly the most eminent type designer of his period.
I understood.
There's no question. I am so happy that I knew him. I can date back that far that I knew him. He didn't live very much longer after I did know him, but I knew him when I came to New York. And he was up here a deep dean for quite a while, and he designed 103 typefaces. And some of them are being used today too, even, and that's a remarkable thing.
When I'm trying to make up a title page without going to draftsmanship, I often have a leaning to fall back on Gowdy bold italic.
That's a good letter. Yes, that's a good letter, and it for many years it wasn't no Gowdy letter was used from the late 30s until about 10 years ago, and then they had a renaissance, and they're being used quite a little now, Yes, I think his job on that was very, very commendable. But I don't quite understand how you plan to use that.
Well, the usefulness of this type of alphabet, the one sign, one sound, at the present time is only for dictionary keys and things of that sort. There isn't the remotest possibility of bringing a one sign, one sound notation into use in the foreseeable future. But
why should you use it for the dictionary keys? What would be the reason to do that?
Because most of the dictionary keys are pretty misleading.
Not Random House. It's very good.
I'm glad you mentioned them, because it was the American College Dictionary that I chose for this as a basis. I think it is excellent.
Now let me tell you about that. You talked about the American College Dictionary of 1953, I think, without giving the publisher's name. And when I first read about this in your materials elsewhere, before I knew you, wasn't that the date? 53, you did not give the publisher. And I had a frightful time finding where that was. And after my writing to you, somewhere in one of your books, you say Random House publisher, which is great. And I happened to be using the new Random House anyway, which I liked very much. And so everything I've done is based on the new Random House.
Have they made significant changes in the key, in the pronunciation key?
I don't know, because I haven't the old one that you had.
Well,
I've hunted for it and haven't been able to get it.
Well, I have the one that I've been using at my desk, constantly within reach. I reach for the Webster based on the third unabridged when I want to know what somebody else is thinking. I have no respect for their treatment of phonetics.
No, I'm glad you don't, because I think the Random House does the best job. Now, There's one word that must have been changed. Long. Their pronunciation gives the AU pronunciation as the preferred pronunciation for L-O-N-G, long, L-A-U-G, not L-O-N-G.
Well, I think it is all, not all. It isn't long.
Yes, but this is what you have for the Gettysburg Address. You use L-O-N-G for the Gettysburg Address. And this has been troubling me.
Wish my eyes would.
Your Gettysburg is L-A-U-N-G. Isn't the Gettysburg in the back of this?
Let's see. That is probably in somewhere, but I've got.
Well, if it isn't in that, it's in the other one.
Well, here.
Here
are the two forms.
And I have been troubled about this.
Well, let me see what is.
It appears twice in the Gettysburg. Here it is. There. Long. L-O-N-G. And they give that not as the preferred pronunciation, as the second.
Yeah, all right.
Well, as the second, not the first.
All right, you've taken the words out of my mouth. One of the rules, the thing that you get the most help on interpreting any of those symbols is the guidelines of this dictionary. There is only one correction, very minor, that I would make in it now. But under the general, and I took this from the ITA in order to parallel ITA as closely as possible when you come to a controlled experiment, because if possible you want to avoid introducing anything that could be called independent variables.
Yeah.
That long is there because of the first statement on page 27, where two pronunciations. Where two pronunciations are recognized by current dictionaries, prefer as a guide the one that will make the West forms more like T-O. Now I can give you a much more conspicuous example of that. The predominant American pronunciation of bin is not bean, but we use bean because it is a recognized pronunciation and it retains the T-O form of a common word. Some of these things that I would not have included are included in order, without stepping outside the bounds of recognized criteria, in order to parallel as closely as I can what ITA has done.
Well, I can see the reason for that, all right.
That is enormously important.
Yes.
A controlled experiment that can't be challenged on the basis of independent variables.
Yeah, I can see the reason for that, all right.
That accounts for long, which you didn't catch, and bin may not be in.
I'm aware of the bin. I haven't come to that yet. I mean, I have that in here, and I see. If you're doing it for controlled experiments with Pittman, then any errors he made, you have to make too.
Not quite.
I'm twisting what you've said.
No, not very much. The point is that I went through all of them and dealt with them on a de minimis basis. For instance, he uses CH or TCH.
Yes.
The same sound according to what it is in TO. Now that is nothing less than an absurdity. It affects so very few words, and yet it introduces another complication. Now those things of that sort that I pruned out without hesitation. But all of these things I say but the things that are actually published by the SSA or the Phonemic Spelling Council, well, they haven't really begun publishing yet, were the result of quite thorough the conference with competent. Let's see now. Wait a minute. What was I on? Oh yes. Sure.
Well, you were talking about the TCH.
Spellings of sounds, yes. I was just trying to see what was involved there. Yeah. Your ch sound occurs 1,900 times. That's the occurrences, 348 items. Of that, 1,457.
What's the page you're on?
The 33.
Yes.
33. Now, you've got over 1,400 CHs. You've got 300 the T's, that of course is in your chun forms of that sort. And you've got only 85 in 100,000 words of TCH.
Yeah.
Now to have one more thing to explain and memorize it, it makes no sense.
No, that's right.
And I pruned out 4 or 5 that are just about in that class. But when you came to figure their influence on on your compatibility, there were 3 left that very definitely justified themselves, and that was the page that I referred you to there, page 170.
Yes.
The doubled consonants. And incidentally, those doubled consonants are useful in avoiding what would easily be mispronunciations by people who know TO and are just reading it along. They avoid quite a few suggested mispronunciations where one would have to stop and think that one was reading a code and not TO. So that they are...
Are you saying that for the combination CK?
No, I'm talking about doubled consonants. No, there's no problem with that.
Oh.
There's no problem with that.
Double consonants, yes.
Yeah.
I notice you do use a lot of those.
Well, you use them where TO uses them.
Yeah.
Merely including CK as part of the general rule.
Yes.
Because that is a doubled consonants. Both of the forms are forms signifying K.
All right. While we're on that page, while I have great reservations about A, that is the CK, I heartily agree with B, which is the C or K where it is used in a TO. I heartily agree with Y or I or EE final, and I don't limit it to final either. There are some other places where it becomes very convenient, like million.
And that is where you get into deep waters.
All right, I know I do.
Because in the language that is used in the phonetics of shorthand for very many years, W and Y are what they call coalescent consonants. In other words, they never form a syllable by themselves. Therefore, when you spell million with a Y, you're on sound ground, but that isn't using it for Schweiz. That's using it in its proper consonantal value. But if you do it with oblivion, then you are making a 2-syllable...
Let me see how I'd write oblivion. Just let me see.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would put a Y in there, but...
Precise, and what you have written is oblivion. not oblivion. You have cut out a syllable.
No, I haven't. Not in the way I'm handling Y. I'm handling it rather than EE.
Well, the
Y-I-O-N. This is what I'm doing. O-B-L-I-V-Y-I-O-N.
Y-I-O-N. Well,
Yes.
That's tautologic. What's the Y doing there?
V on. Wait a minute. Maybe I'm wrong on that.
Yeah.
Obliv.
That's their only.
And I'm assuming that O is a schwa.
Yes,
yes.
it is.
O-B-L-I-V-Y-O-N.
Well, that should be pronounced like million.
Oblivion.
Oblivion. No, oblivion.
Vion. No, Vion.
Well, my point is that
An extra syllable. The Y is one syllable, and the O-N is another. Oblivion. All right. Now, rather than have that Y in there, I could have a double E.
But why? Why not just the I? Why isn't that the correct?
All right. Oblivion.
You
Eon. That's all right. Put I there. Oblivion.
The only thing you need to do to oblivion
That's all
to
right.
bring it into New Speller West is to make the O the long OE. The rest of it is as phonetic as it could be.
Well, now, need the O? Should the O be OE or not?
If you happen to schwa, the general rule is that you leave any vowel that represents schwa, except for U before R, which is only used for the accented schwa.
Yes.
So that the O is quite correct there.
All right.
Just as in an earlier form of Wes, which was worked out before some of the discussions that we had in London and elsewhere, we spelled shun, the S-H-U-N. Well, of course, it isn't shun when you get down to it. Action. It's schwa. And since it is schwa, and since you haven't any schwa, the rule is that you use the letter des. And that is what the British had done. And they were quite correct in it, and we conformed to the British experience in that.
On that shun. Didn't I find shun in here?
Is that the Webster Collegiate?
No. Random House Dictionary of the English Language.
May I
College
look at
Edition.
that key just a moment?
Yep. That's my Bible. And when I learned that you agreed with a Random House, it made the thing doubly my Bible.
Well,
I think you'll agree with this key.
So far, except that I don't remember there putting the ligature over in, I don't notice any difference from the key that I have been
You mean
using.
for the E-R?
No, for
over?
ing as in sing. They, for some reason, have put the ligature above it, probably because it would tangle up with the tail of the G.
Yeah, that's all.
The H-U-R-R. The schwa. Well, of course, they say what is the usual statement that schwa occurs only in unaccented syllables, which, as I say, I don't agree with, and which Webster, having gone a league too far in one direction, is now going a mile too far in the other.
Well, I'll have to.
There are, I think, slight differences.
The schwa. Well, the only am I not right that the only accented schwa is
before
UR?
R. Before R, yes.
Yeah, UR.
Yeah. Yes.
Yes. And the unaccented of the same sound is the ER.
Is ER or any other vowel that happens to fit. I mean that if you have, wait a minute, let's see. There is one change that if I were making, and if you've got your copy of the dictionary there now,
Yes.
you might note it. This was a result of the committee trying to straddle the fence between Pittman and the Simplified Spelling Society.
Mm-hmm.
And as a matter of fact, by doing that, we did the wrong thing, since neither of them is correct. Now, where it says on page 26,
Yes.
in the list that says right E, you have ace,
Yes.
age,
Yes.
put in airy, A-R-Y, after that.
Airy.
A-R-Y.
A-R-Y.
Then on the preceding page, cross out that last sentence about at the bottom of the page.
Yes, library.
Retain A in area and so forth. Now the reason for that.
Yes, I've got no underscored here.
All right.
I've got it underscored, necessary, and library, no underscored.
Yeah, well, cross out that sentence and you will find you are entirely right.
Right. Library, the way I think library ought to be, is L-I-E-B-R-E-R-R-Y.
Well, you don't need the double R.
Yes, you do, because the E is a short E. It is not a schwa E in library.
Yes.
It is not library. It is library, like Mary.
Yeah, you're quite correct.
And therefore, the only way to indicate that, I think, is with the double R.
Well, again, we were following in that what the British have done, and I think correctly, in that it is unnecessary to deal with the E before R. It takes care of itself. The U before R, you remember it says, is used always and only for the accented schwa.
That's right.
But E and most anything else can be used before R for the unaccented, and it's only where this is in here, if I can find it quickly enough.
Oh, I'm glad I can cross out that, because I've got 3 underscores under the word no here, because that really troubled me.
Well,
that really troubled me.
Well, let me tell you why it appeared in that form. The Pittman uses the long vowel A in that place. And
library, yes. Yeah.
And that is all wrong, to use a long vowel in an unaccented secondary stressed place. So we ruled that out. But the British retain the A, and rather than differ from both of them, we decided at that time, because we hadn't entirely written off the SSS, we decided to go along with the British. Otherwise, we would have done what you have just done with your pencil. Have put it with the
yes, but I can't feel that it is good enough to have just one R. I think like a carry. I think
and thus it brings out the swift clearly. I can't think for the moment whether there's an initial one that shows that same switch. Well, of course.
Well, now, may I satisfy myself on a couple other points?
Yes, by all means.
Because this is
Stick
just
to your
wonderful to talk about these things, because these are the things that really trouble me. The trigraph AER. It seems to me that we get so much closer with many words if we would use the trigraph AIR rather than AER.
Well, let me tell you a little history there. In the alphabet which preceded this Spelling Reform Association phonetic alphabet that we have been looking at, the one sound alphabet, we had a superfluous character for the vowel in air, care, fair, and so on, because we had two of the top phonetists, Professor Grandgent of Harvard and Professor Raymond Weeks of Columbia, and one of them was willing to settle for using a in that connection, and the other was willing to settle for using a. But
I read that somewhere.
We couldn't get them to agree, and as a matter of fact, what West does is what Pitman shorthand has done for a century, and what the man in the street is most likely to take it as because of the effect of the R, namely using a. You can justify to the phonetist a variation of the a or a variation of the a, and the phonetist will have none of your saying that it's a, but the man in the street will take it as a, and Pitman shorthand's been written for 140, 50 years using a for that vowel. So as a practical matter, that was what we settled on doing. And the only reason for that trigraph is to nail down without discussion which vowel sound you're to use in that category of words. It isn't for a single sound. It's not a legitimate digraph or trigraph. The AE is a digraph, of course, but it's like the AR and the OR. It's simply put in there as the quickest way to say in this group of words, air, care, fair, there, and so forth, use a.
Well,
and that's based on shorthand experience, which is almost the only kind of phonetic writing that most people have ever done.
yes, I appreciate that. I think we're in using AER.
Yeah.
I think we're using. I think we're not getting. I mean, if it is to be a, if it is not, I think if you use AE, then I don't think you need the trigraph at all. Just call A, and that's the end of it.
You don't, but somewhere you have to tell people which to write in that occurrence before R, because, as I say, quite a lot of people, I think it was Grandgent that would settle for the sound, and Weeks that would settle for the sound, but neither of them would settle for the other. And it is true that there are variations in that sound to some degree, regional variations, and some are nearer to A and some are nearer to A, but you can get away with A in any case.
And if you used AIR, it would look more like English in a great many important words.
Like there?
Yeah. Well, it certainly isn't in there, but it looks as good as AER in there.
Well, then you are introducing a new.
Yes,
it's a hybrid.
You're introducing another sound. That's right. You are.
Yeah,
you are.
And
yeah.
There's no justification for that if you can avoid it. And all shorthand experience tells you can.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Now, you've answered that. I'm not quite happy with you. I'm not quite satisfied with your answer, but I know your reason for the answer. I know your reason for the answer.
Yeah.
Now, why can't you drop the final E on double E, IE, and OE in the words we? Double E rather than double EE. Drop it always as a terminal in the case of a terminal letter. When it is used on the end of the word, drop the E from EE, IE, and OE.
Well,
in all cases, if you wish. Now, SEE, you would follow TO in that case, I would think. But in we, you would drop it. In hallow, you would drop it. HALO, hallow. Not HALOE. I'm doing it in the interest of saving keystrokes.
Yeah.
And making it look better.
Well, simply to express the point of view that guided us in working these out, and they've been through quite a number of workings, both here and abroad. We wrote off the question of space saving in a digraph notation. It is so small that the considerations of your simplicity and compatibility are more important. And what you're doing there, if you write he, me, she, and so on and so forth, is simply creating word signs that have to be memorized.
No, not if you always remember that there is no such thing, I believe, as a final short E, or a final short O, or a final short I that is not used as a Y.
Well,
there is no such thing in English, so far as I have been able to find out.
Well, of all the forms, you have to make allowance for the limitations of my eyesight that have to read.
You don't show any in your book.
Well, they hadn't failed then.
They hadn't.
My eyes hadn't failed.
No. But I mean, you don't show any terminal short short e's, any words ending in short e, in f, nor no words ending in short o. And with short I, where I was ending them with the sound double E, you're ending them in I, but that is can always be and should be written Y. So that I say that since no word ends in those short vowels, you can just as well leave off the E.
Well, I think the word that jarred me as much in reading through your samples as anything was your why, because if there's one thing,
WHI.
Yeah, that is that your one sign, one sound. Your I, if your short I, if you include Swift with it, which is what this notation does, is the most frequent sound in the language, and you're thoroughly accustomed to when you see that letter by itself thinking of it as it. And other.
You mean the Y?
No, the short I that you ended
your
Y with.
When do you see that?
What do you mean, when do you see it?
When do you see a short I on the end of a word?
You don't.
That means if.
You don't. Why, yes. That means you don't. But the point is that no matter where you see the letter I, you're conditioned first and foremost to take that as the is sound. And therefore, it's a very jarring offense to the I to have it turn up where it's meant to be I. About the only case where you would find a final I in that way would be foreign. Latin plurals like
Yes.
alumni.
Yes.
You just don't find it in
No, you don't find
in
it.
English.
All right. Then I would answer if that particular what I say about terminal E's in these three cases.
Mm-hmm.
Not in the A or in the U, the AE or the UE. There you have to retain the E. But in the other three, I make it optional. And I feel that if it turns out that WHI is jarring, then it should be spelled WHIE. And just like the word C, SE would be jarring. But SEE is acceptable.
Well, you would be astonished at how many problems you get into in derivatives and inflections when you start dropping.
Derivatives, you have to put it in.
All right.
Hallows. H-A-L-O-E-Z. Hallows.
Yeah.
You have to put it in all cases for derivatives.
Well, the point is that all of these additional things, like your Q and X and so forth with your diacritics, are additional rules, additional offenses against the one sign, one sound simplification.
Right.
And those are the things
Right.
that for an initial learning medium needed to be pruned out as thoroughly as possible.
Yes, except that I feel there, and I think you'd agree that if you prune them out too much, you lose balance. You lose a visual compatibility, and the amount of visual compatibility that you're looking for and the amount that I'm looking for is not the same.
No.
You're looking for less than I'm looking for, and you may be right on that.
Well,
and I can be all wrong. But and if you're only thinking, I would have to absolutely agree with you. If you're only thinking about children, teaching children, then that's correct.
Well, now let's come to the other half of my question that started this off when I said, what was your purpose in shaping Newsfell, and how did you hope to bring it into some degree of use? I know, after 60-odd years in the field, I have discovered, or thought I had discovered, only one possibility, namely the use of an initial learning medium which is phonemic, till you have a couple of generations of adults with phonemic consciousness. And if that is so, then you need to judge it by the standards of initial learning. And in that initial learning, the resemblance to TO is of no help whatever, because they have never seen TO.
Right.
And today, we have the experience of literally millions of school children that the transition is very much easier than anybody had thought.
Right. Now, I would say, correct to what you say, but I would say your years in this did not have the present automatic printing advantages which have just come in, and I would like to explore those and see if there isn't some possibility, some hope of showing all of a sudden a newspaper printed in this, and seeing how offensive that would be.
That would be wonderful if you could pull it off.
Well,
I think I am heartily with any effort of that sort, and you know infinitely more about the printing side aspect than I do. I'm talking only about the acceptability, the possibility of getting it accepted for any purpose by the
Right.
present generation.
That's right. I just have the feeling that with the changes that have come about and are accepted, we saw the decimal system go into British money very easily. They accepted it. We're seeing now the decimal system going into England and Australia. That as I walked through London not too many months ago in the colleges, one printing school there, when you walk through the door, it says over it, this door is 3 feet 8 inches wide, or 1 meter and so many centimeters. It says to the next wall is a 21 feet or 7 meters. Trying to get, and we are going to change here to the decimal system, and we're going to have to do it in order to keep up world trade.
Of course we have, and we're a century late on it.
Absolutely.
The mechanical industries have been the strongest lobbyists against it. They magnify the difficulty of changing gauges and screw pitches and lathes and so on and so forth, and they have dragged their heels for not a generation but 3 generations.
Yes, but just let me say this. They really do have a problem. They have an enormously costly problem. To change to simplified spelling can be done mechanically overnight. So far as the printed word is concerned, without anybody doing anything. It's easy compared to what has to be done to all the industries, to all hardware stores, to all that. It can be changed overnight, and you can and if we can get a method that can be readily read by people who are only able to read the old way, or acceptably read, why, then we can make that change overnight. I know I'm looking at things that won't happen, but I am.
Wait a minute, I've picked up your dictionary. Which is yours?
Well, I guess one of them. Yeah. No, this is yours because it says, "Please return prompt." This isn't mine, and I am going to ask you to let me keep it a little longer. This is the one that you have only one copy of.
It is.
But I'm really using it, as you can see.
Yeah.
I'm using it hard.
Yeah. By all means. But
may I ask another question?
Any number.
Now, when you come to the intra-word period, or the diaresis, where you indicate, as in the word, as in a word where you've got 2 vowels coming together, a long vowel followed by a short vowel.
Mm-hmm.
You either put a period in there, or you put a hyphen, somebody else puts a hyphen, and so forth.
When you go over to the house, I'll show you what we do on the typewriter with a separator that's on a dead key along with the ligature.
I don't think you need it, because is it not true that when you've got three vowels, you never have two short vowels coming together, do you?
Oh, yes.
What is a case?
The, experience.
Yes, well, of course, I would use a Y there.
Well, of course, that on the premises that this has been developed and that the British agreed with when we came to working out agreement. That is
I can't help what's been agreed to.
illegitimate.
I don't find any reason to have that.
Well, the point I'm making is that it has been tried and abandoned. That's the point I'm trying to make. When this book was published, one of the differences between S and short A sound. Well, I'll have to. Under the simplest until the the first thing that we agreed on in the 1950 odd conference that brought us together for the time being, the letter Y shall not function both as vowel and as consonant, but stand only for the consonantal sound of Y as and yet.
Oh, well,
and
if we have to accept that, then we're in lots of trouble. If that has to be accepted, then we're in lots of trouble. But if we could let the Y stand for a short I or a double E, then we solve all these problems.
No, you don't solve all of them. You just get a different group.
Correct. Right. You don't solve all of them. You get a different group. Now, here we've got the word coincide. Now, we would spell that C-O-E-I-N. Now, my feeling in all the words that I've been able to unearth, and in what I've done in looking through your FR frequency line, indicates to me that you always get a long vowel before you get the short vowel, except in where you can use a Y, and that by a long vowel I mean a digraph. A digraph, yes.
Well, when you say except where you can use a Y, you beg the question. That is.
I haven't begged the question because everything I've done has been done that way.
Yeah. Well, that is all right
if we don't accept the 1950.
If for some reason you want to do it, certainly it's a free country. but it isn't true, as you stated, that when three vowels occur in succession, it is always the first two that form the digraph or the long vowel. Which way you put it.
Do we have an example where it's not?
Yes, how about abbreviate?
Oh, all right, now let abbreviate. All right, now would you accept the EE there for abbreviate?
No, it isn't E. It's schwa, and the nearest approach we have to it is the short I.
The short I. Well,
and it's like so many of those words from the Latin, they're practically spelled about as well as they can be now.
All right, I will answer that.
You've got another group, for instance, that medieval is an example.
There, that sounds good. Medieval.
There, the first one is is the short A, and the next one is the double E, so that the effect of it, as you look at it,
Yes.
if you take the first two letters, they're I, and you'd have to pronounce it medieval.
Yes, yes. That medieval is an awfully good word because
I can only say on the dual use of Y that it was used for a considerable period, and it was abandoned by full agreement of the top phonetic scholars then available, like Daniel Jones and Walter Rittman and the Lloyd James, and I don't know if Gilbert Murray was in on any of the discussions, but they were top flight speakers of English, and after trying it for a substantial period, they agreed to drop it.
well,
It's a funny thing about, there's a fascination about working out notations of this sort, and it's jolly good fun, but there's
I know there are. I know about the pitfalls, all right.
it's not as true as of spelling as it is of shorthand, but there's an example that I used in my research on shorthand, that what led me into research on it was that you make a slight change for purposes that seem excellent when you're looking at it at the time, and the next thing you know, its ramifications turn up all over the place where they aren't wanted. Do you know that physics experiment known as the Prince Rupert's drop?
No.
That is rather interesting. It's an old experiment. If you drop a drop of molten glass into cold water, it crystallizes into a pear-shaped drop with a tail that goes off into practically a hair. And if you break off the very tip of that hair, say the drop is here and the hair extends out here, you break off the very tip of that hair and the entire drop shatters to powder, because the tensions set up are so great from the instant cooling of the molten glass. And I used that in my shorthand thesis in pointing out that a shorthand system was very much like a Prince Rupert's drop, that you tried to make one adjustment as you thought, and you wound up with a handful of others.
That's called the Prince Rupert's drop.
drop.
That's a good illustration.